Hello everyone, how are you? Okay, so I've got a bit of a follow-up video today, which is like that one I did about the Giacomo Turra scandal, because I mean a few other people on YouTube have made videos about this subject, and I've watched quite a lot of them. So if anything, it's brought a lot more. It's brought a lot more of us, together, I would say. So hello to all of you. Like some, it's like sort of higher profile channels. Some of them sort of more sort of modest. But what I was really want to talk about, is really this idea of like, like the reality bubble, the YouTube bubble. I mean, it was Trey Xavier, I think that's how he pronounced his name. He used to call himself Gear Gods. I mean, he's been doing videos for years, and where you could actually submit your songs to him, and he would come back and say, "Your riffs are not a song. Go away and come back with a song." And and so he made a video recently, made some very similar points that I put in mine about how we've had this a lot, where it's like Instagram, YouTube, you get these little shorts, somebody doing this incredibly technical thing, but it's all mimed, or it's all stitched together, or it's all done like using some software, and then it's just like miming to it, and Mary Spencer actually did something similar, and she didn't actually call this one outright, but she did this one about the need to be for being real, like presenting you who you are, in an age of doctored videos and AI, and trying to competing for streams on Spotify and all the rest of it. But I just want to talk about this, this whole reality bubble, because there's other things been going on, like this last week or so. Particularly something like, well, I'm right, change the subject completely. One of what used to be one of my other favourite subjects was Doctor Who, until the recent series, where like the ratings have not been all that great and the writing's not been all that interesting. But without giving away too many spoilers, there was an episode, like the most recent episode. There was an episode where like the Doctor and his companion, that they actually they push against like the glass. Hang on a minute, knock it on the glass, push it through, and then they're in the lounge of some Doctor Who fans who are watching Doctor Who, and so it's kind of like breaking that fourth wall idea. But in itself, that's not really new. But I sort of think they could have gone a little bit further with it, as in have the cliffhanger of the episode there. That like the Doctor explores that world, and there's some other problem there he needs to solve, and then gets back and then solves the main, deals with the main enemy that was going on in the world he's just come from. And then of course that leads into things like, like you've probably seen Last Action Hero, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the AC/DC and Megadeth music is in it, and where the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, he comes out of the cinema screen, and then there's a mix-up between him and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and etc. I mean, I don't want to spoil too much. I'm sure you've seen that one. And then, of course, there's things like the Truman Show, where Truman realises his whole life is this reality TV show all geared around him, Pleasantville. And but there's other stuff as well, like going. I mean, not only like did he used to be like a big Doctor Who fan, but like what's known as like sort of cult TV. The series UFO. Jerry and Sylvia Anderson. Back when they were married, and there's an episode of that called Mindbender, where there's this crystal which has been sent by the aliens. Like the idea is whoever holds this crystal, it sort of projects your worst fear, and you can't tell the difference between reality and what your fear is. So Commander Straker, who's like the head of like this sort of military organisation, he gets hold of this crystal, and then suddenly, not only does he break through the fourth wall, but he's in the studio where they're actually filming an episode of UFO, and you know, and then he's been, you know, because he's having this, you know, this argument with his boss, and his boss is just, you know, it just ends up just being this actor, you know, and then the director's saying, oh, let's go for another take. You need to put a bit more drama in it, and you know, don't ham it up too, you know, etc., etc. But then he actually starts exploring it, and then, you know, realizing that like his whole life is a film set, and then there's a small little sort of movie theatre where they're showing the daily rushes, and these are things like from his life, you know, like the breakup of his marriage and the death of his son and all this sort of thing. Again, I don't want to spoil it too much, but and things like The Prisoner, you know, like the Patrick McGowan series, you know, which is like just kind of really wacky, but like the last few episodes, they were kind of on similar territory as well, you know, where, you know, this whole question about, you know, how certain can you be about reality, and you know, reality being manipulated and what have you. But even then, it goes back even further than that, you know, that things like Hamlet, you know, I don't know how, I mean, I'm trying not to be too worthy if you're not familiar with Hamlet, but quite often, you know, like Hamlet, you know, the idea is that he's this prince who becomes king, but he's not ready for it, and even when he does become king, he can't do anything, you know. There's a kind of like an irony there, but he's coming out with these monologues about how paralysed he is, and everybody in the play thinks he's mad, and yet he's talking to the audience, you know, and he's coming out with, you know, like those famous, you know, that famous that monologue, you know, that thing about, you know, the undiscovered country where no traveller, you know, that bit, you know. But he's talking through this fourth wall to this, you know, the audience. So you then got a question about, like, well, if that fourth wall wasn't there, who's Hamlet actually talking to? And it starts getting a very sort of absurdist thing, you know. So there has been this history in theatre of, like, you know, characters just talking directly to the audience, but the people in the play, they're not aware that they're in a piece of fiction. You know, this is like in that, also, yeah, linking it back to more modern stuff. You know, things like that film Pleasantville, if you've ever seen that. You know, Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon, and then they end up in this 1950s sitcom, and then it's exploring all like the tropes and the cliches of, you know, like this sitcom, and they're bringing it, you know, as they are, it's like, well, as they're sort of confronting these tropes and cliches which are there, they're actually gradually bringing everything into colour, you know, until it all goes into colour, and apart from like one or two characters that are left in black and white, you know. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's, you know, it's a lot of fun. And then you realise that some people in this, you know, this Pleasantville drama are just like stick figures. They're not actually doing anything, you know. You know, it's their function just to be sort of background characters. They don't really do very much. And then, of course, as the Tobey Maguire character interacts with them a bit more, then they start developing, and then like reality starts to implode on itself. So, what's this got to do with like the YouTube bubble and all that? Well, it's a matter of like just recognising it. You know, that, like, you know, finding some reality. You know, in fact, I'm almost like paraphrasing that episode of UFO now. Let's get back to realities. You know, that it's great. Yeah, you know, getting like all the big subscribers, and you know, like the endorsement deals, and you know how many views I've had today, and you know, and then like uploading the video, and everybody's thinking, oh wow, but of course it's all fake, and you know, I think it is time to actually, you know, just to start being a bit more, you know, a bit more real about it. You know, understanding your limits. Why do you want to play the instrument in the first place, if that's what it's about? You know, do you want to entertain people, or or you're just interested in, you know, learning about music and, you know, and playing, and you know, I mean, I'm just kind of, you know, just, you know, I'm just throwing some of these ideas out, you know. Well, there's another one. You know, there's a comedian called Brian Conley. He's a British comedian, and he used to do this like routine, like with this glove puppet, and he was being horrible to this puppet, and then the audience is going, you know, they are, you know, going, oh, you know, like as he's being sort of nasty to this puppet, and then he'll turn around and go, it's a puppet. So maybe we should be actually calling some of this stuff out a bit more, just going, it's a puppet. You know, I'm sure, you know, when you've seen, like, you know, like films, not only like with like not so good writing, but like the special effects haven't quite worked. You know, like this, the rotoscoping's not quite there, so there's blue fringes around things, and you know, and there's obviously, like, you know, they've edited stuff, and they've chopped a scene which, like, it doesn't link with everything else, so you're not really making sense of what the story's about, and or like, you know, or somehow Palpatine returned, or whatever, and then you got to try and, like, well, hang on, how does this fit in with everything else that's gone before, and you know, so it's, what I'm saying is, you know, it is time to actually just to be a bit more honest, you know, about yourself, but also with other people. You know, I mean, if you're doing it for the money, well, good luck to you. But if you're doing it about, you know, about being honest, you know, a bit of integrity about what you're doing and what you're saying, a bit about, you know, like gaining confidence. You know, I mean, I had a comment through today about, you know, saying, oh, it's great stuff, but you should be a bit more confident. You know, well, this is who I am. You know, I mean, it's you know, I mean, that's like one reason why I set up this channel is, you know, to be a bit more confident. You know, to have that confidence, you know, in front of the camera, and, you know, to be able to talk about things like music, and you know, get over things like my stammering, or you know, whatever. And red light syndrome, and you know, and present, you know, when I'm playing, it's just, if there's fluffs in it, if there's missed notes or the timing's out, then, well, there you go. You know, try and get as close to live playing as I can, and, you know, and I'm hoping, you know, one day to actually, you know, get out there a bit more, and, you know, do some sort of live, you know, proper live playing, you know, where maybe some of you can come and see me, or, you know, whatever. So yeah, so I'm going to wrap it up there. You know, just really, you know, like, it is about time this bubble has burst. You know, and it's kind of linked in with some of the stuff that's been going on lately as well. You know, so yeah, so I hope you got some sense out of that. Please comment below with your thoughts. Thanks for watching, as always, and I'll see you next time.